Hi, I'm Joe Scacciaferro, and this is On Location. Okay, so as most of you know, my career is a little, as they'd call, unconventional. I'm in music, I'm in broadcast, I'm in theater, I'm in aerospace, I'm in blah, 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 blah. So for me to run into somebody whose career actually blows me away is pretty effing awesome. My next guest is just that awesome person. So for the past 30 years, he's been creating at the top of the music industry. He's done it as a guitarist, a songwriter, a bassist, a vocalist, and a vocalist both on stage and studio, a music director, recording engineer, front of house audio engineer. All right. So you think you know somebody like this? Well, let's see if your person has done it with the same level of talent that this guy's done it as. All right, roll it. Okay, had enough? No? Okay, there's more. Go. All right, like I said, no one comes close. So welcome my new best friend, John Allen, better known in the world as J3. J3, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It's absolutely 100% my pleasure. That was awesome. So let's set up where you and I were talking before we went on the air. And I had said, I'm looking at this resume when you sent it over to me, and I'm going, wait a minute. How is it possible we've never crossed paths? It makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, usually I go, let's go back to the beginning, but I don't want to do that right now. So give me some idea of all the things you've done, which is the one you like the best?
At this age, I would say it is a toss up between. I love mixing front of house. I'm very lucky that that's my job now, and I love the band that I work with. But I also love producing. Like, get a good band, go in the studio, great singer, and not be necessarily even playing instruments, just helping it all along, helping the songs get done, getting performances, and guitar playing, which is where I started, which I still do at least an hour or two a day, and I build guitars and those three things.
Wait, build guitars wasn't in part of what I saw.
Right. Not like professionally, but I did in the 80s, and I kind of got back into it and just building a lot of repros. And
that's awesome. That's
these custom shops want a lot of money, so I'm like,
that's the reason I've done everything. Being broke ass and you want something, you figure out how to figure it out.
Exactly.
All right, before we get too far, I got to take you off track for a minute. Explain front of house, because a lot of our audience isn't from our industry.
Yes. So the front of house audio engineer is essentially the guy who's mixing for the audience. He's mixing for the venue. There's many other mix engineers, especially if, in some of your broadcast world, you'll have all these different layers, TV and live broadcasts. But I'm essentially responsible at a minimum for what goes on inside the venue, for what the crowd hears. And it's a place where if you're really in touch with your artist, you can make amazing things happen. I think there's a misconception on not I consider it a pretty difficult job, but the biggest part of it is really fighting with the rooms and the venues that you're in. You know, like the mix is the mix, right? The PA is the PA, the band's the band. But then you know, one day I'm in a gigantic stadium. Next day I'm in a 400 seat club. The next day I'm, you know, on a band shell somewhere, and they all sound different. Some sound amazing, some sound awful. And so you have to sort of put your creative hat, take it off, and sort of become sort of you're just trying to nudge it to where everything's clear, everything's good, the people like it, and a lot of the subtleties can get lost in these crazy venues. But yeah, that's
a minimalist version of what you do. I know that is because I've done it.
It is.
And
it is.
Front of house is literally a member of the band. A good front of house is a member of the band because you're right there. You're in it. I don't want to say in the mix because that's kind of
you make it or break it. If it's bad, you're screwing everybody. You're screwing yourself. You're screwing the band. You're screwing the audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when it's really good, it can be like transcendent. You know, I know like it's really disappointing as an engineer to go see bands that I love and have the sound be even just mediocre. I'm like, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm so hooked on the records and I really know what they sound like and I can probably get them halfway there. You know what I mean? And it's like when it's not happening, you're frustrated for the band and the audience.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. This is going to take 6 hours for me to do this interview. I'm just going to have fun asking questions.
Part 2, we could do part 2.
There's so much. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your career. Did this and continues to do this. What is, without going right to the beginning, which I'm going to get there, but what is the spirit of that? What is the motivation that moves you into different places? And then you have to get good at those places too.
Yeah. And kind of to some degree do them all at once as, you know, as they sort of cross over. I mean, honestly, I was thinking about this before, you know, like I was playing hockey as a little kid. I started playing guitar at 7 because I couldn't play trumpet. I really couldn't get anything to come out of it. But I was just like, the guitar, you know, my teacher was always like, oh, he must practice so much. My mom's like, it stays in the case. Like he really doesn't give a shit. But there was this point where like, you know, I had my father's records, and my parents were pretty young. So, you know, it was Hendrix and Zeppelin and Steppenwolf and Pink Floyd. And, you know, so I had all of that shit. Like as an 8-year-old, you know, Zeppelin, the Beatles, and my uncle was a big audiophile who was a jazz head. So I got all that stuff at the same time. So, but the thing that really made me go, I want to do this like for a living, as opposed to, oh, you can just play guitar, was Jimi Hendrix. Once I saw, you know, my dad was in the whole film industry side of my life and my grandfather and my father, but for my 11th birthday, he brought a 16 millimeter print of Jimmy Plays Berkeley for me and my 10 friends to watch in the attic. Shit. And like to say that my head blew off is an understatement. And I was like, that's it. Like there's literally, you know, and it wasn't like, oh, I want to be Jimi Hendrix or I want to try to be better or even get into the discussion. It was just, I knew I'm like, whatever's closest to that feeling is why I would pursue this. Kind of dumped hockey, got really into guitar. All of a sudden I was playing 6 or 7 hours a day all through my teens, you know, and I was I was playing with grown-ups in bars at 14.
Wow.
Like, you know, New York City by 15, you know, I had played L'Amour as a 16-year-old.
Nice.
And it took a lot of trust on my parents' part, but I was really, really, really into it and worked really hard, and people called and I got some gigs and there we were. And so it's really, as far as like deciding when to make changes in your career, if you're, you know, the hardest part is even getting one, like just getting it to the point where you can pay rent, you know, because that was, I mean, the first 20 years, man, I mean, it was we didn't have a van. It was like band in a station wagon, eating ramen noodles, going to Save a Lot to buy like, so we could afford beer, like that was sort of the vibe. And like at a certain point, getting to be like, this almost late 20s, and I'm like really not making any money, and we got really close to getting a record deal and all this stuff. But again, the industry kept changing. We were a little bit too old, a little bit too, the music was a little bit too political and a little too all over the place for most labels to deal with, even though a lot of them really liked it. The presidents were like, but this isn't, this isn't a boy band. I'm like, no, it most certainly is not. Like I said to you before when we were talking in the beginning, the real like sort of eureka moment of me like changing gears was after, banging away in clubs for 15 years and getting that close, but just not getting there. I got a call to audition for the Tommy Lee Band. And I was not sold on being, I was just about to do a solo record. I had all these ideas in my head. I was really not sold on being a sideman. I grew up with Motley, loved it, but I was like, I don't want to do that. There's all this thing. And then I was kind of like, I'm still in my basement in Park Ridge, New Jersey, making no fucking money. And I was like, I got to just get out of here and do something, So I was like, just told myself, it's like, you can't turn down a gig that you don't have. You know what I mean? It's like you can delude yourself into thinking that you could do it, but until you're doing it, not so much. There's always more to it. So I decided to try my hardest to get the gig, make it impossible for anybody else to get the gig. And that's a whole show in and of itself, just the whole audition process. But that was where I said, and I said this to you before, where I'm like, okay, I get it. The universe is going to tell me when it's time to jump. They're going to tell me, it's going to tell me like, okay, this is cool. It's awesome. We love it up here. You love it down there, but it's time to turn. And I trusted it, and it just changed my life. He was great as a person to create with, like very free spirited. We're also both Libras, like born 3 days apart. There was all of that. But one of the best things about him creatively was like just cutting out the bullshit. Like you take a song, here's all your parts. He'd be like, nope, snip, 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 gone, gone, gone. I was like, what happened to my song? And then we'd listen to it. I'm like, oh, it's fucking perfect now. That's what happened to it. So, and I sort of just,
you were
I
writing,
just kept following.
You're right. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just want to make sure I know where you're at. You're writing and playing guitar at that point, or singing.
In the beginning, I was just the touring guitarist, right? We get to the end of the first tour. This is 2001 into 2002. And he's like, come on, man. I know you have songs, because I didn't send him my records. I sent him me. That's part of the audition story is I made demos of his stuff, me recording everything, drums, bass, guitar. They had a rapper, like all of this shit. And so I gave him some songs that I really wasn't ready to let go of yet. And he's like, I want this and I want this. And I'm like, and then Motley went back out on the road and there was all this time. But eventually in 2009, we sat down and did a proper record where we wrote together. I gave him a whole bunch of songs. I was the primary writer on that record. So, and then I was co-lead singer of a lot of those, including the single, which we did the Tonight Show. And like his manager wasn't too psyched that he decided to put me next to him like, on camera, like as the other singer. Like, this was like, well, I did write the song, so I appreciate it. But we were kind of doing it all. And we also, because we just loved writing, we would just screw around and do stuff for the sake of doing it that nobody was ever going to use. Just totally insane. He was a very free creator. Like he which I was really like, at that point, especially with my whole, like trying to get signed period, was kind of like a little angry at the industry for being very closed-minded and very McDonald's, it's just, if we even sign you, just start making the cheeseburgers, it's like, don't get too creative.
Yeah, That's a thing nobody outside of the world
whole other
knows that
show.
that's what happens. How many times have you heard somebody say, "Oh, I heard this guy the other day. He's going to be so fucking famous because he's awesome," or "I saw her singing and it was incredible." And I'm thinking, you have no idea.
Yeah. And that's another thing. It's like, it seemed like, especially, the 90s were really a great period for music. And so toward the end there, it was like, it really shifted to some really cookie cutter, fashion based, not a lot of talent. And of course, American Idol convinces everybody that anybody can sing like Aretha Franklin, and anybody, like, it's not really true. So that was a really good experience. And then, and of course, dealing also with was like, oh, you think, oh, I made it, but then Motley gets back together and we don't tour for like 7 years. So then
okay. I was just going to ask you, you went 2001 and then 2009.
Yeah. So it was like, we toured for like 2 years. Then there was like 2 years off. We did some more recording. We did another, a couple TV appearances. Then Motley goes out for years. And that's really when I started doing sound, because somebody threw me a front of house gig in Hoboken and I needed a job. I was like, and I was playing in cover bands and doing stuff, but it was just getting a little too fragmented. I was starting to lose my mind. Trying to make money doing 90 things. I was like, I'd really like to make this something I can sink my teeth into and also make some money. And that's really where it started. I'd always recorded since I can remember, like since I had a tape recorder. I mean, I still have, writing songs on the answering machine. I have all of that stuff. And then we had 4 tracks and 8 tracks, and then we had ADATs. And then, we did the whole thing, had the home studio with the band. Eventually got a Studio 800, did all of these things. But I'd never, like, live sound was a thing that, I was sort of like, why does this always suck? Like, it'd be like when, as a player and a singer, it's like, why is this always fucking terrible, And then there'd be the one day you go play CBs and it would be amazing. And we'd be like, find that dude. And next time we give him $20 and we give him, we're going to grease the wheels here. Like, well, there's got to be a reason, and I really wanted to figure that out, and I got to do that in that job. I ended up working as a house guy at 2 different big bars for 12 years, and mixed every band. Most of those bands are, some of them are our mutual friends, but they were all bands that I knew, which really helped. And I learned how to do monitors from front of house. I learned how to, make bands that sounded terrible sound okay. Learned how to make, bands that were good sound great, and bands that were great. It's just like, what am I doing? I just put the faders up, and that was a big, that taught me so much about the whole thing. Was understanding that side of it completely changed the way I played and I sang and performed, and and was able to communicate to engineers when I went back to being a player, which I know you wanted to talk about that. I mean, that's really the biggest thing.
That is in everything anybody I ever talked to, any mentor I've ever done, any lecture I've ever been on, every blog, I repeat the same thing over and over. You need to understand and have an appreciation for every discipline that's involved in your show. I mean, as a television producer, as a touring producer, I have to understand, because otherwise you're asking people for shit that can't be done.
Impossible.
Or you're not making any sense. You're saying, I've been in, and I'm sure you've experienced it, I've been in recording studios as the engineer / producer, and I've had some moron from the label listen to me going, oh, you know what? It needs to be more red.
Yeah. Can it be purple?
What are you talking about?
Can you make it go sideways?
What is red? Is it hotter? Is it edgier? I don't know what red is. This is audio. And I'm so glad you said that, because that is one of the things people need. And I'm looking for my notes. I just wrote a bunch of shit down because I was writing a blog, because that came to my head was, I know we all think you should find a niche and perfect it.
And just stay there.
But you can't. because you everything we do, unless you're an artist, a portrait painter,
Right.
you got people that have to be involved in what you're doing.
Everybody has to integrate. Everybody has to work together. Everybody has to have a goal that we're trying to get to this thing. And that's also, obviously, because I told you I loved producing, but anytime I had the opportunity to record somebody's music that I liked, God forbid, at like a good studio where I could just produce, and I had an engineer and I had a room and we had like vintage mics, and we had all of this stuff, I really drank that in. Like, that was like, if I can make this happen, I could take something that does not exist and have a record or have a song that people think sounds great or the artist thinks sounds great. And it's a lot of psychology. It's a lot of making people feel comfortable if they're trying to perform, particularly in the studio. And if you've never played and this is another thing that drives me fucking crazy, is like, not mentioning any names, but I've seen people who've never really played or sang like absolutely destroy a player or a singer in the studio with the same stuff you're talking about. Oh, it's that one number 18 was good, but number 36, like, the person's dead. We've been singing the same song for 3 hours. Like, you know what I mean? Like, having unrealistic expectations.
Oh, and your background, as you said, your family, your legacy there is film. And then, so film, television, theater, it's all the same. And if you're not in those rehearsals,
it's all performance.
Right.
Yes.
And if you're a clown and you keep making that artist or that talent, say it again, but say it with more boom, and say it again, but boom.
Yeah.
My editors, when I first went into broadcast, I don't mean to dominate, but it's
no, please.
The stories are so paralleled. When I first went into broadcast, and I didn't really even know what editor, I didn't know any of that. And I first sat with my editor, and I said, I'd sit down with my call sheet, and okay, here's what we got, and you know what? I think the one take that might be the best. I have the greatest editor in the world who really mentored me and changed me. And he's a Secaucus boy. He is attitude personification. Jersey. His production company is called Attitude Plus. I mean, it's attitude. That's his whole thing. So anyway, bottom line is, I'm a young newbie. He turns around and he looks at me and he goes, "The best take is the last take." And he spins back. He did one of these and then spins back around and goes, "Here we go."
Yeah, exactly.
And it is. Of course it is.
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about, particularly when recording, working with an artist who has a bunch of music. You have to have a plan. You have to have all this communication on what do you want it to sound like? What do you want the instrumentation to be? If they don't have ideas, I gotta make the ideas. You know what I mean? I may have to write the parts. I may have a guy who's got great lyrics and a nice melody and a really, all the other parts of the music either need creation or they need to be reinforced or they need a bridge but all that communication. And also, like, with singers, and I only know this because I took that whole journey myself. It's like, it's really psychological. If you're not in a good mood, or, your girlfriend just broke up with you, or you don't have a place to live, like, it could be really hard to get that good performance, or sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes the performance is driven by chaos and destruction. I mean, a lot of my favorite rock music was made by people that were, not necessarily in a happy place.
Right.
So you're sort of like manipulating all of those strings and trying to get to the end and do it under budget or on budget. And, I just hate when, it was one of the great things about working with Tommy is, like, we're just trying to have a good time. Like, even if you're making something that sucks or you're going down the wrong street with the song, it's like, let's not hate it while we're doing that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's it's art. It should be hopefully entertaining to everybody, including the artists.
Yeah, if you, it's the hippie bullshit, but it's really the truth. You gotta love what you're doing, and that energy, that spirit flows. You could
Yep.
have the stupidest song in the cheapest time, but if you believe in it and you believe in the
Yep.
message and everybody's on board with it, that thing will just sail.
Yeah. Yep.
May not sell, but
May
it'll
not sell. Spelling's important on this.
So again,
yeah.
let's go back to some of you that chronological movement. So you're down. I just laughed when you went from Tommy Lee to Hoboken. So you're down. You're down in Hoboken.
I was still there.
But
I was still there.
But the key was you were a guitar player, songwriter, and then you decided to learn something new. So you go back to the woodshed to learn something new and then work your way back up. It wasn't, I'm here, so I should be doing this.
Right. You can't, I think it's really important for, and of course, once I had my eureka moment, I knew this, but for people that just like, how am I going to, you can't you can't really tell it how it's gonna go. I didn't know when I took that sound gig. I thought like, oh man, when I get older, maybe I'll want to like mix all the time. That was kind of where my head was at. And I knew I loved studio recording, but again, there was like no money in anything. It was like that 2008. I was like, what are we doing? So I had this bar gig and I was still playing. I was still doing some recording on the side. That takes me from 2005 all the way through 2012. Whiskey Bar closes. I get another gig, the downtown in Red Bank. Now I had to drive to it, but it was still a cool venue to mix in. It was big. It was still most of the same bands. Good vibe, they had a sushi bar. I mean, I was like, yeah, this works for me. And I could sub it out. I figured out, early on that like, I don't give up a gig until you absolutely have to, because it was paying your bills. And somebody goes, Tommy or Seven Dust or whoever is like, hey, 3 weeks. And then you got to go to your bar manager and go, well, I'm not going to be here for 3 weeks. They're just going to hire somebody else. But what I used to do is I just got 3 or 4 dudes or chicks or whatever and teach them the job, have them come in and then supervise them, and like, so that I could leave and they could fill in. So they'd make some money and they would learn. And then I would come back and still have my job, which is a whole other thing though, of like teaching people your job, because all those bands are like, oh, fuck, J3's on the road, we got and you're trying to keep, it turns into a scheduling thing. I had people not showing up. I'd have people that worked for me for 5 years that would just like, oh dude, I took mushrooms and I forgot. Like, no, you can't. Great job. Like, and I'm like on stage in Atlantic City getting phone calls like, where the fuck is the sound guy? I'm like, oh my God. So it's a lot, but, so I work at the downtown for like I ended up being 4 years, but and I was still playing in bands, was a music director for a couple of acts, was in some tribute bands and doing sound, trying to make a living out of it. And I get the phone call for the Struts, and it was an old friend of mine who used to sub for me, but he was a touring sound guy and he was becoming a tour manager, and he's like, hey, I don't think I can do both. I don't think I can also mix this band. Like, and I was like, wow. And I went and listened to it. I just thought Luke was, the greatest voice I had heard in 20 years. I'm like, this kid is, I go, does he sound like this live? And he's like, he's actually better than that. I'm like, They give me enough money, I'm dumping everything, So I kept my bar gig for like, until it was impossible to keep. Until it was like, I was looking at 10 months of dates, and then I was like, okay. And I just told him, I was like, guys, I got to go do this maybe in the future, but I'm not even in the state and I won't be. And I got to, take that turn that the universe gave me. We started, when the Struts started out, we were playing places that were half the size of my house gig. It was little. I was like, fuck, I'm going backwards. Like, this isn't even a console. Like, what the But then 6 months after that, there we are at Staples Center opening for Motley Crue, and Tommy's like, dude, sounds like shit. it was just like I had to learn all the consoles. I was strictly mixing analog in both of my house gigs. All of my recording stuff was analog, and then it's like, no, there's literally good luck finding H3000. Like you might do 2 gigs in a year that you're gonna, you know what I mean? So that was a whole thing. That was frustrating and difficult, and I was under the gun, like because management and the label, they're bringing all these people out, they're trying to hype the band up, and we're in arenas, and I'm like, what's a digital snake? Like what, where is the pan pot? Yeah. But, I really loved the band, and live, they're a pretty different thing that's become my domain. I've kind of been able to co-create a sound that's quite different from the records. The records are not take a band into a garage and track it. Like there's a lot of, so we very much have a rock and roll show, but they're still 10 years later. They're still, I'm never like, oh God, when is this gonna, how many times have you been like, oh, when is this gonna when's it gonna end? Like they're amazing. They really take their performance and their fans and the show and the pomp and circumstance like to the nth degree. And we've, as we'll probably get to, we've been in the good graces of some of the legends of rock in places that I never thought I would ever be, just because we're doing it like that. Going up on stage, guitar, bass, and drums, there might be a little keyboard in the background. Like that's it. That's just no bullshit.
All right, put a pin on moving into those other things, because I definitely want to touch on that. That's only part 1. Where do you see part 2? It's insane. This J3 is just incredible. I love talking to him, and he's just a wealth of information and pretty entertaining at the same time.